You know, it's hard to have perspective when you're walking through pain. Can I get an amen? Like, when you're going through a difficult season, it's kind of hard to keep proper perspective. Because for most of us, when we're walking through pain, we're not really looking for opportunities. We're looking for an escape strategy. And it's kind of like a pregnant woman nearing the end of her labor pains. They tell you, look at the focal point because all you want to do is get out of that situation. Can I get an amen? And so the truth is, for many of us, when we're walking through seasons of difficulty and pain and process, it's hard to see that God might be moving in the midst of it. Because for the majority of us, we're just trying to get out of it. I'm just trying to get out of my current season. Anybody going through a season like that right now where it's like, I just want it to be over. Can we exit where I currently am at? And the truth is that we find Paul in a season much like this. We spoke about Paul last week where Pastor Q talked about Stephen, the first martyr. Paul was a guy who was originally named Saul, and he was a pretty bad dude. And he was consenting to the death of the first martyr named Stephen. But how many of you are grateful that even when you were an enemy of God, God still loved you and pursued you and had a purpose for you? I'm grateful that I couldn't outdo God, that he was chasing after me. And so even in the midst of Paul's horrific acts of violence against God's kingdom, God pursues him on the road to Damascus and changes his life. Hits him off of his horse, and all of a sudden, Paul experiences the power of Jesus, and he's transformed. Not only does he get a name change, but God changes his reputation from being a persecutor of the church to becoming one of the greatest champions of the vision of the church. Come on, aren't you grateful that God didn't just change your name, but he changed your reputation? And so Paul is preaching the gospel, and he's getting himself into trouble because when you live for God, sometimes you can get yourself into some trouble. And you can make some waves and you can make some noise. And the communities that you once were recognized as the bad dude, now all of a sudden God has shifted your life and you're standing for something different. And not everybody liked this. In fact, Paul finds himself in Jerusalem preaching the gospel. And to give you a bit of a backstory before we talk about the scene that we just described, Paul is preaching in Jerusalem and he gets arrested for preaching because he causes a mob. People start rioting. They are so angry with the message of hope, which isn't it crazy that a message of love, acceptance, and hope can induce some of the most angry and vengeful emotions in people. It's crazy to me that those who preach the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, are still being persecuted. And so he causes a riot, he causes a mob, and it tells us throughout the journey in the last few chapters in Acts that Paul appears before the Sanhedrin. He's called to give his case. Why are you preaching what you're preaching? And you need to shut your mouth. But Paul, instead of backing down, he pushes forward. And he declares that, I know you're trying to silence my voice, but I can't stay silent with what God has done in my life. That night, after the council is over, he thinks that his process is finally through. He's finally come to the end of the season, and then God shows up in a dream. It says that Jesus appears before Paul, and he says, hey, I'm not done with you yet. I know it seems like it's been bad. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, I'm going to call you to stand before Caesar. And you're going to go to Rome. And not only are you going to share about me in Jerusalem, you're going to have an international platform to preach the gospel. But it's not going to come easy. How many of you know that when God gives you a destiny and a purpose, it may look like a beautiful destination, but the journey to that destination is not always pretty. And so Paul then has to stand before two leaders. The first is Felix, and he's a Roman leader in Caesarea, and he pleads his case before Felix. And instead of trying to get out of the council, he appeals to go see Caesar because he knows that God is calling him to Rome. And then after he sees Felix, he has to stand before another leader, Herod Agrippa, and he pleads his case before Herod Agrippa. And here's what's crazy. When he stands before Herod, he pleads his case so well, and he preaches the gospel so effectively that here's what Agrippa says. He says, if you hadn't appealed to Caesar, this could have all been done right now. In fact, you preach so well, I might even become a Christian right now. But Paul wasn't looking for an easy way out. He wasn't looking for an exit strategy. Paul knew he had an assignment. And even though the process might be painful, I've got to get to my purpose. So I'm not going to stop short. So they put Paul on a boat with a bunch of murderers and rapists and prisoners. And they set sail to Rome. Problem is, halfway through, Paul gets a word from the Lord that if they continue going, they're going to face a storm that is going to destroy their ship. And Paul looks at the sailors and he says, hey, it's not a good idea. We should turn back. If we keep going, you're going to lose all of the stuff that you're sailing with. But they didn't listen to him. Have you ever felt like nobody is listening to you? And the reason why we got into this mess is because you didn't listen to me. And now the Bible tells us that they're in the middle of a storm, afraid for their life. And we find them as they're hanging on by a thread. They've thrown all of their cargo overboard. And finally, an island appears called Malta. It's an island in the middle of nowhere between where they need to be and where they have been. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in the middle of where you used to be and where God's calling you to be? I'm just hanging out right now, just waiting, wondering if I'm ever going to get out of here. The Bible tells us that just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the ship smashes up on the shore, blows into smithereens, and there they are on this island in the middle of nowhere. I think there are many people in the room this morning that feel like this. You feel like you're not where you used to be, but you're still not where you're going to be. And the vehicle that you use to get to where you're supposed to be is no longer put together. How am I going to get out of here? And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the Bible tells us in Acts chapter 28, verse 1, they arrived safely on the shore. They found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us. Why? Because it was raining and cold. This is like a scene right out of a movie. You just made it through a storm. You washed up on the shore. Your boat is everywhere. And now it starts raining. And the truth is, for many of us, the reason why we're so stressed out is because we weren't expecting to take stops along the way. The reality for many of us is that we were expecting to be at our destinations by now. I was expecting to be married by now. I was expecting to be in my career right now. I was expecting my kids to be just somewhat obedient by now. But I'm living in an unexpected place. Can I help you this morning if you're in a season that you've survived through a storm and now you're in the middle of an island and don't know where you are, how you're going to get out of there? You've got to learn how to expect the unexpected. You got to learn how to anticipate the obstacles that you were not expecting to arise in your life. You see, if you're like me, type A personality, wants it his way all the time, you have a timeline for your life. You have a 5-year plan. You have a 10-year plan. You have a 12-second plan. Everything is planned. And it is very frustrating when things don't go according to plan. How many of my planners in the room? You keep a daily planner. Anybody got the written planners still? Like this came out when I was a kid. My family would go to Disney every summer for vacation, and so my family we would fly down to Florida and go to Disney, and I'm not a huge fan of Disney. I think it's kind of corny. You see, this is so weird. If you like Disney and you're an adult, I'm sorry. I think you're weird. I think you're weird. But it wasn't very exciting. But I did love this one ride in Disney called the Tower of Terror. It's my favorite ride. You know, you go up in this thing and they show you all the haunted areas and then they just drop you out of nowhere. I love that. Feels so good, right? And so as soon as we get into the park, I'm not trying to waste my time standing on the teacup thing line. I don't want to be there. I don't want to go through. It's a small world after all. It's creepy. It's weird. It's scary. And so as soon as we get into the park, I beeline for Tower of Terror because I've been there before. I know where I'm going, right? And so I'm walking like a New Yorker really fast because the worst thing for New Yorkers is to be caught behind slow walkers. If you're walking on the street and you can't keep up this pace, like, please just get out of the way. And so I'm walking to Tower of Terror, and I look back about 5 minutes into my walk, my power walk, and my family is nowhere to be found. I'm looking for them. I can't. And so I stop, which is infuriating for me. And I look back, and there's my mom and my sister playing with keychains and trinkets in the store where a stuffed animal costs you $500 and your firstborn son. You're not going to buy those. Why are you looking at them? They're going from shop to shop. You know how they stop? You say, can we take your picture? They're taking pictures and they're not paying for any of them. They're just taking pictures. And I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, can y'all keep up with me right now? I know where I'm going. We got a destination, Tower of Terror. And if we don't get there in time, the line is going to be all the way outside. Because you know what they do? You got the outside line, and then you go into that like room that looks like you're going to get right on the ride, but then there's a hidden line in there too. So I know we got to get there quick. And they're not following me. And I'm frustrated because I got a timeline and I have a pace. And my pace tends to be a lot faster than everybody else's pace. Being in a relationship has taught me this, that when we're going to dinner, I set a reservation. We need to be there at this time. I'm at your house ready to go, and you waited till I got there to do your makeup. We gotta go! But the pace is different. And I remember that day I was walking, and I was waiting at the ride, looking back at my family, bouncing from little place to place. And I remember the Lord spoke to me, and he said, Jared, you're missing it. I said, what are you talking about? I'm standing at the destination. He said, this vacation was never about you getting to the destination. It was about making every moment in between matter. Because memories are made in the meantime. But for many of us, we're not expecting to stop along the way. I just want to get there and accomplish the goal. I wasn't expecting to have pit stops to my purpose. I wasn't expecting to be detoured from my destination. But I've learned this, that you will escape living in disappointment when you expect detours. You will escape living in disappointment, chronic discouragement, when you expect the detours. We were driving the other day, and the little navigation system said this: traffic ahead, do you accept an alternate route to your destination? Sometimes there are things in your way that God sees that you can't see right now. And if you don't accept that there's an alternate route to get to you to your destination, you might miss that what God has planned for you right now actually matters. They were not expecting to wash up on the shore of the island of Malta. They didn't even know what Malta was. They thought they were just going to get chocolate malt shakes when they got there. There's nothing. It's raining, it's cold. But I've learned that if you can expect the unexpected in your life, you'll get a lot less disappointed when things happen that you weren't anticipating. And you'll make the most of that meantime. Here's what Proverbs 3 verse 5 says. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I know you think you know what you're doing. And I know you think you've got the right path. I know you think you've got the best strategy. But don't lean on your own ability to understand because you don't see the traffic ahead. You don't see the full picture. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. It may feel like you are bouncing around crooked paths everywhere, but when you submit your plans to God and you allow the unexpected to happen in your life, he will take those crooked paths and he will make them straight. God had told Paul, I will get you to Rome. I know it may not look like the route that you planned, but I'm going to get you there. If I set it over your life, I will accomplish what I have spoken. And so they wash up on the shore. Unexpected opportunity or obstacle, really. It's all about perspective. And I love what Paul does. Here's what it says. In Acts chapter 28, verse 3, it says, after they washed up on the shore, Paul gathered a pile of brushwood. Stop. They're in the middle of nowhere, washed up after surviving a storm and a shipwreck. And now they're on the shores. And can I tell you what most of us would do when we're in the middle of nowhere, experiencing what we didn't expect? I didn't want to be here. Right? Because it's really easy to sulk on the shore that you didn't expect to stop at. Like, I thought I'd be so much further than I am right now. It's not fair. I've been serving God longer than they have. And we sit on the shore and we sulk. No, I'm not helping. Last time I tried to help, you didn't listen to me. That's why we got here in the first place. So I'm going to let you do you. But Paul refuses to sulk. He says this, I'm going to survive. Y'all can sit on the shores, but for me, I'm going to survive. I know I didn't plan on stopping here, but I'm not going to die here. I'm going to survive. If I'm here, I'm here. And I'm going to make the most of the meantime that I've got. Paul decides to rekindle his fire. Can I help you this morning? When it's cold and it's raining, don't sit on the shore sulking about what you don't have. Start searching for what you do have and start rekindling your fire. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what to do. I ain't got no boat. Doesn't look like I'm going anywhere for a while. But you know what I can do? I can make the most of this moment. I can try to figure out a way to survive even when everybody else around me has been shaken. So I'm going to find whatever I can find in my situation to rekindle my fire. Sometimes it's the pieces of the boat that broke on your way to your destination. I just got to find what I can find, man. I know it looked really good when it was all put together, but that dream is gone. Okay? That vehicle is gone. You got to get over it. And you got to make the most of the meantime you've got right now. Paul, he decides to rekindle his fire in the midst of a difficult and frustrating situation. He makes the most of the moment he's in. You know who does this really well? The girls who, while they're stuck in traffic, are putting their makeup on in the mirrors. Whenever I see it, I have like split emotions. One side of me is like, I really admire that. That's pretty cool. And then the other, I'm a little bit afraid. I wasn't expecting to be in traffic, but you know what? I'm going to make the most of it. I wasn't expecting to be in this season right now, but you know what? I'm going to make the most of it. I'm not going to sit and sulk by myself. Here's what Paul decides to do. He decides to grab wood like everybody else. Because I'm not too good to get my hands dirty. And I'm not better than everybody else that I think I'm the only one walking through my pain. Can I tell you, you are not the only one going through hell right now. There are other people that are walking through more difficult things than you could even imagine right now while you're crying over your failed relationship. Somebody's walking through cancer. Somebody just lost a child. And the truth is that when you sit and you sulk, you isolate yourself from everyone else. But Paul decided to get in community and rekindle what he could. This is why we're so passionate about e-groups and e-teams. It's not because it's a program we're trying to push and grow. It's because when you come to church, it's amazing. It's exciting. You feel encouraged. The enemy doesn't hit you while you're in church. He hits you when you drive off the parking lot. And now you're not in church anymore. But when you are the church and you're surrounded by other people that are the church, it doesn't matter where you are. You got community. Today might be the day that you get connected. If you're feeling isolated and alone right now, it's because you are. But there are other people that are going through what you're going through. But he doesn't just join everybody else. What I love that Paul does is he gathers what he can gather. He realizes that for him to have a fire, he's got to contribute to the altar. I got to put something on there. If I want to benefit from this fire, I've got to be a contributor. It's my responsibility to own my own encounter with God. For many of us, when pain hits our lives, the last person that we run to is God. Instead, we run to substances. We run to relationships. We run to social media, whatever it is that can numb the pain. We don't know what it's like to, once we've experienced a shipwreck, to begin to build a fire again. The enemy tried to rain on your parade. He tried to stifle your flame. But can I tell you, you can rekindle the fire that once burned in your heart. Get back to the place of prayer. Start reading your Bible again. Get back in church. Do whatever you've got to do, but build a fire again. But it's in the place of revival that resistance always rears its head. Because in the moment that Paul starts gathering sticks, the Bible says something happened. Let's read it together. Acts chapter 28, verse 3. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood. As he put it on the fire, a viper, a snake, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "This man must be a murderer." In fact, just because he escaped from the sea, our goddess, whose name is Justice, must be paying him for what he is due. You know when you're doing everything you should be doing, and you're serving, and you're tithing, and you're giving, and you're loving, and you're obeying, you're just doing what you know to do. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, a viper, because of the heat of revival, is driven out from the fire. Can I make it plain for you this morning? There are many of us in the room that are walking around with hands like this because we don't recognize you weren't just hurt, you were bit. And the bite is not the relationship you're struggling with. It's not the coworker you don't like. It's not the boss that controls your paycheck. It is a spirit that has been assigned to destroy where God is sending you. Can I break it down for you? There are 3 things to recognize about the spirit of the viper. First is that it came unexpectedly out of the fire, which means that when you're pursuing God and you're doing all the right things, the fire of revival burns out the issues that were once unseen but are now exposed because of your encounter. This is where we stop short. We get discouraged. I was just doing all the right things and now I'm attacked. Yeah. That's how it works. The enemy doesn't care about you when you're not moving forward. He cares about you when the fire is burning again, when there's a glimmer of hope again, when life starts burning again. And when it comes unexpectedly, you can know that it is not flesh and blood, Ephesians tells us, that we are wrestling against. But it is spiritual powers, principalities, demonic forces that are coming against you. You can't fight if you don't know what you're fighting against. And church, can I tell you, you cannot counsel out a demon. You must cast it out. You cannot negotiate with the devil. You must remind him that he is under your feet. He has no authority. He has no power. When it is a spirit, it comes unexpectedly and it comes out of the fire. The second thing about the viper you need to understand is that it is not just the bite, but it is the venom in your veins that causes death. Because it hurts you the moment that they said that to you. And it hurts you the moment that you watch that person get blessed and you didn't. And it hurts you when that person bit you in the back, but it hurt in the moment. You walked away thinking, I'm gonna be okay. What you didn't realize was that the bite released venom into your veins. And it's been weeks, and you're wondering why you're so angry and bitter and unforgiving, and it's festering on the inside of you, and you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Time isn't healing all wounds, it's making it worse. It's because the bite hurts, but the venom is what stays in your veins. If you've been struggling with unforgiveness and bitterness and it's lasted for weeks, you might have been bit by the spirit of the viper. But the last thing about the viper is that it doesn't just bite and walk away, slither away, leave you. It hangs from your hands. Because the viper works to redefine your reputation. It says that when the islanders saw it hanging from his hand, they started to judge him, not according to what God called him, but according to what they saw. You might have been bit by a viper if these thoughts are crossing your minds. I can't go back to church. I can't let them see me again. I can't show my face again. They don't understand me. They don't really know me. They just judge me. They just criticize me. You might have been bit by a snake that's hanging on to you and refusing to let go. I believe there are many of us in the room this morning that our hands look like this. And we're wondering why we're so upset, we're so angry, we're so bitter, we're so depressed. You can't counsel it. You can't negotiate with it. You can't even pray it away. There's only one way to deal with a snake. There's only one way to deal with a spirit that will not let go of what God has called you to be. It says in Acts chapter 28, verse 5, but Paul shook the snake. You've been praying. You've been worshiping. You've had more conversations about your dysfunction than you've ever had about anything else. But can I tell you this morning, if you want to get rid of the snake in your life, you've got to shake it off. You can't deal with it with conversation. You can't counsel it. You got to shake off the thing. Shake it off. Come on, hit your neighbor and tell him, shake it off. Just shake it off. I know you want to try to figure out a nice way to deal with it. Paul realized when it's a snake that came out of the fire, it is my job to send it back to where it came from. You try to remind me that I got bit, but I'll remind you of your future. You're going to the fiery pit, devil. You go right back to where you came from. And some of us this morning, we need to shake it off. I know you've had so many conversations. I know you've prayed so many times. I know you've read so many inspirational Bible verses. But today, it's time to recognize that there's a promise over your life. In Mark chapter 16, Jesus had already said this. He said, "These signs will accompany those who believe. In my name, they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands. And when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all." You see, you already had a promise that when you were bit, you had the antibodies on the inside of you. You can get bit all day, but that thing can't kill you. Here's what happens. The moment that he shakes off what it was that attached to him. Acts chapter 28, verse 7. It said that they saw it and they changed their minds. Oh, we thought he was a murderer. Now we'll call him a god. Because people are like that. They have an opinion of you one moment, and then when they see you living in victory, they get a whole different opinion of you, right? That didn't faze Paul. He wasn't affected by their opinions. He knew his promise. But there was more to Malta than this moment. Because Paul, due to his victory, gets an invitation. And in verse 7 it says, there was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and showed us generous hospitality for 3 days. His father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went in to see him, the guy who had been bit, and after prayer placed his hands on him and healed him. When this happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. They honored us in many ways, and when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with the supplies we needed to get to where we needed to go. Once you've shaken off the snake, it's time to let the hurt heal. It's time to let the hurt heal. I'm not talking about your hurt. Your hurt was already healed. But with the same hand that was bitten, Paul lays that hand on the life of somebody who's broken. And he says, I know that I've been hurt, but look at my scars. Look at my scars. They prove that there's power in me to heal what's hurting you. And I'm not going to hide my scars. I'm not going to hide my experiences. I'm going to use it as a testimony to lay what was bitten on your hand, because what was bitten now carries your breakthrough. Would you stand to your feet in this place this morning? Maybe you're in Malta, not just because you needed to stop there to get supplies, but maybe God sent you to Malta because it's not really about you. And maybe you needed to get bit because there's somebody that's broken. and you have the healing power of Jesus on the inside of you, but somebody needs to see what happens to you so they can believe it can happen to them. Many of us in this place this morning, we're saying things to each other like, do you realize what's going on in my life right now? Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, now this. But when you see it outside of your pain and with godly perspective, you realize that that line doesn't belong to you. In fact, it's the devil who's saying, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, he escaped Caesar, he escaped Herod, he escaped Felix, and he got back on that boat. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, he survived through the shipwreck. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, he survived the snakebite. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, he healed somebody who was broken. I can't stop this man of God, this woman of God, who is a force against the powers of the evil one. Here's what I want you to recognize. You are a force against the powers of darkness. You are a force against the evil one. And this morning, you can stand upon the promises of God to know that no matter what comes against you, he that is in you is greater than he who comes against you. Come on, do you believe that in this place this morning?